All right, we are live. What's up, guys? I am here with Alex Fata. Uh, he is a CHEK practitioner and he believes in functional nutrition. He was a professional wakeboarder and pretty good surfer. And I stumbled upon him on Instagram. He has a very unique perspective on diet and lifestyle. And so wanted to welcome him here. I think he can provide a lot of value for you nurses who are struggling with your stress every day. So welcome, Alex.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and tell me a little bit about your journey into physiology and what led you on that path, as well as nutrition?
Yeah, well, I've been interested in it for a long time and just kind of, studying it on my own. And like you said, I was a professional athlete for years, and you know, I did a lot of stress. I put a lot of stress on my body, did a lot of damage, and that after all that happened, that's when I really dove into it head first and went to the CHEK Institute, learned about nutrition, learned about physiology, learned about rehabilitation as well. And, I just took all the tools that I learned from them, and I was, able to heal myself to a good degree naturally. And now, I'm just kind of getting my business off the ground now and just trying to, take my experience and my knowledge and just help other people on their healing journey.
What was your injury?
Yeah, just various injuries over the years, a lot of knee injuries, back injuries, just a lot of abuse really.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
just
then
stuff.
can you explain more about the CHEK Institute?
Yeah, so basically the CHEK Institute, they teach holistic health. They have two sides, the HLC side, the holistic lifestyle coach, and that's more, nutrition and physiology and lifestyle based. And then they have the CHEK practitioner side, which is more like anatomy and rehabilitation. So yeah, it's a really good program. It's definitely one of the best in the industry, in my opinion. So yeah, just been studying with them for years. Did about 3 years of courses with them. So yeah, it's a great program.
And this is a pretty interesting question I want to ask you. So, in my experience with healthcare, I was working in the ICU. I don't think that a lot of the things we're doing for patients and our society is helping them in the long term, which I think you term it allopathic, right?
Yeah, that's one way to put it.
Allopathic is pretty much slapping a band-aid on the problem and not finding the internal issue, right?
Yeah, just exactly. Just I mean, how would I put it? Yeah, just treating the problem. It's like this for that. You have this problem, so we use that solution instead of, treating the person or their lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think our society, we need to start moving more towards preventative measures instead of, oh, I'm sick. And I saw this a lot with my patients. Oh, I'm sick and I need you right now to fix me, and I'm angry at you for not being able to fix me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about, taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for your health. And, I mean, that, it's starting to shift a little bit more like in the healthcare industry, especially in the States, but it's a slow process. But yeah, it's just a mindset shift, really.
Yeah. And so you specialize in helping people recover from fad diets, right? And I would assume that's to build a more sustainable life with
Yeah,
nutrition,
yeah. I
right?
just yes. So that I just kind of fell into that, just helping people with their nutrition and the clients that I was getting. I was just seeing so many people getting caught in different fad diets. Like the vegan one is a big one. The plant-based thing, the animal rights thing, and then on the other side you got, the ketogenic diet for weight loss, and then you got the carnivore diet. So that was, that's kind of the niche that I fell into. So that's what I've been focusing on now. But really, yeah, so I focus on human physiology and how the human body works, as opposed to, like different fads and, this for that approaches. So,
Yeah, I have quite a few friends that have subscribed to the ketogenic diet, myself included. I found it wasn't sustainable in the long term. Just there's so many different options with carbohydrates nowadays, and ketogenic diet's very strict as well. And I noticed a lot of my coworkers in the hospital, they heard ketogenic diet, they jump on the train for 1 week, they don't do it correctly, and then they feel discouraged instead of developing more of a holistic approach with all of their food, right?
yeah, the keto, it's totally not sustainable. I mean, that's the problem that I see, in the nutrition field, especially on social media, is that, you know, most people, uh, most people don't know what they're talking about. Most people don't have a real education. I mean, anyone can get on social media, and have a following, and especially with the fad diets, like, I mean, and they prey on innocent people. They prey on people who want to lose weight, I mean, and it,
Mm.
like something like the ketogenic diet, it does work for losing weight, but that doesn't mean it's the correct way to do it. And that doesn't mean it's sustainable. I mean, there's better ways to do things, especially with like people like nurses. Like, if you put a nurse on a ketogenic diet, that's only going to increase their stress even more and make it worse. So yeah, so that's part of the reason why I put so much emphasis on, fad diet recovery.
Yeah, and the problem I found was when I subscribed to a specific diet, I've tried pretty much everything under the moon, but
Mhm.
once I subscribed to it, I realized a lot of the people following these diets, it's a belief system, and they don't want to change their belief system when new research comes out, especially the people that are trying to sell something. So if someone becomes a coach for keto and new science comes out, it's going to be very hard for them to subscribe to that new belief because they have to change everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's groupthink, I mean, it's like it can be like somewhat like a religious mentality, if you've been doing this diet for so long, or if you've made podcasts about it or wrote articles about it, I mean, it's easy to get sucked into. And yeah, it can be hard to change your beliefs. So that's another big problem with the diet communities. So
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So I want to dive into a bigger topic since you're the physiology expert, and a lot of the nurses that I'm working with, most of them at some point in their life or currently are dealing with burnout. A huge array of symptoms there, but most of it is obviously with the autonomic nervous system. They're every day for 12 hours a day. They're in a state of fight or flight.
right.
So do you want to talk more about that? Just educate the viewers on.
Yeah. So basically, what the autonomic nervous system is the part of the nervous system that regulates things that we do not think about consciously. So things like hormones and breathing, digestion, etc. So the autonomic nervous system is split into two branches. You have the sympathetic branch, which is your fight or flight branch, which is helpful for things like working and exercising, etc. then you have your parasympathetic branch, which is your rest and recover branch, which is helpful for things like sleep and, muscle recovery, etc. So, so if you're in a stressful job like nursing, you're more likely to be overly sympathetic. And based on what you've told me is that, most of the nurses are overly sympathetic for long hours throughout their workday. So the key is to try to keep it as balanced as possible. And, we can use tools to balance the autonomic nervous system. I'm sure we'll get more into that, but yeah, that's just a brief explanation of what it is.
Okay. And then, so what are the like long-term consequences of constantly being overly sympathetic?
Yeah. So if you're overly sympathetic for too long, you'll get a weakened immune system. So, you can get more susceptible to like colds and flus. If it, you can get burnout, as you mentioned. You can get adrenal fatigue. You can get chronic fatigue. You can get thyroid issues. So yeah, those are some of the long-term consequences. But there's tools that you can use to mitigate some of the effects, because you can't, if you're a nurse, you can't just necessarily quit your job. So that's why we use different tools and techniques to, mitigate some of the effects of being sympathetic.
Yeah, well, and especially during the COVID epidemic, a lot of nurses, they're just burning, and they don't have a choice at this point to back off. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the tools you'd recommend to help decrease that.
Okay, so basically, when you're working, right, you're gonna be sympathetic, because that's just part of your job. So, there's things you can do throughout your day. One of the things you can do is, make sure you bring food to work, and try to eat. I know this is hard, but try to eat frequently throughout your workday.
Do you have food recommendations? Because a lot of the nurses I know, they run to a drawer in the break room and throw peanut butter on a cracker. But what are some quick foods? Bananas, fruit.
Yeah. So
peanut butter.
So I like to harp on both macronutrients, protein and carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So protein is basically animal based. Carbohydrates is plant based. So, like I said, try to eat frequently throughout the day if you can, and try to eat both protein and carbohydrates. So like an example of a carbohydrate source would be like fruit, so if you could bring some fruit, and then an example of a protein source would be something like hard-boiled eggs, or, beef jerky, or, those are two that come to the top of my head. But yeah, so eat frequently throughout the day, eat protein and carbs. Because if you don't eat frequently, that causes your blood sugar to be unstable. And when your blood sugar is unstable, that's just another stress to the sympathetic nervous system. Unstable blood sugar is sympathetic, right? So we try to eat frequently as we can. I know it's not always easy, but that helps stabilize our blood sugar, which takes a burden off the sympathetic system. So that's one tool you can use.
Can I stop you real quick? What's frequently? Every 2 hours? Every 3? Depends on the person, I would assume. But
yeah, no, 3 to 4 hours.
Okay.
Well, you can snack frequently, and then you want to eat, like if you can, you want to eat meals every 4 to 5 hours. and then snack every 2 to 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's food wise. And another thing you can do is slow down throughout your day. Any chance you can to just slow down and check in with yourself, check in with your breathing,
Yeah.
and close your mouth and breathe through your nose, 5 deep nose breaths. I mean, we can get fancy with the breath work, but really, essentially, the mouth is meant for eating, the nose is meant for breathing. So just anytime you can just close your mouth and, do 5 deep nose breaths, that really helps reset the system. And like I said, slowing down throughout your day, whenever possible. Find a quiet place if you can, a quiet place to just slow down and check in with yourself. Yeah. What else did I write down?
With the nasal breathing, are you familiar with James Nestor's work?
No, I'm not.
No, yeah. So yeah, he's a breathwork researcher, and they went to Stanford and they plugged their noses and breathed through their mouths for I think 14 or 30 days, something like that. And their heart rate variability decreased, blood pressure shot up, and then they reversed it and just taped their mouths and only breathing through their noses. All of those bad health outcomes went away and they got healthier.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah. I think I've heard the name. I'm not super familiar with it, but yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So those are some of the tools, that I had written down. Eat frequently, eat protein and carbs, check in with yourself, close your mouth, do 5 nose breaths when you get a chance. If you can, go outside and just, take a walk in nature, on your breaks, on your lunch break. Yeah, getting outside, getting fresh air, getting into nature, finding a quiet place to just briefly check in with yourself. Yeah, those are some of the tools that you can use to help balance your autonomic nervous system throughout the day.
Cool. Can you talk more about adrenal fatigue?
Yeah, so basically, okay, so the autonomic nervous system, 2 branches. You have your sympathetic, which is your fight or flight, and then you have your parasympathetic, which is your rest and recover. So when you go sympathetic, you release stress hormones, specifically cortisol and adrenaline. And then when you go parasympathetic, you release recovery hormones, so specifically testosterone, estrogen, and melatonin. So when you're overly sympathetic, basically your adrenal glands release adrenaline and cortisol. And if this goes on for a long period of time, what happens is basically when you're sympathetic for a long period of time and your adrenal glands are overworking, you don't get the recovery, and you don't get the right parasympathetic, which is hard on the body, which causes fatigue, it can cause digestive issues, it can weaken your immune system. Yeah, so adrenal fatigue. So essentially it's chronic fatigue. It's the classic burnout feeling that we all get. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue, burnout, it's all kind of the same thing. Basically, your body is just overly stressed. You're not getting enough recovery. You're not getting enough regeneration. You're not getting enough parasympathetic, which it's basically, I mean, I could go into like the science behind it, but basically it's your body. It's your body just screaming for help. Basically it slows down everything in your body. So it forces you to rest. It forces you to take a break.
It makes you feel like crap, so you have to do something about it.
It makes you feel horrible. It makes you feel burned out. So you have no choice but to rest, to take a break. So essentially, yeah, that's how it works. Not to go into the science of it, but essentially, yeah.
Okay, and then what's your opinion on coffee then? Because I've heard coffee can cause adrenal fatigue if you drink too much.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to say that like you're a nurse, you can't drink coffee, because that's just not realistic.
But the problem is nurses are drinking 4 cups a day. I was drinking up to 6, depending on the day and how stressful it was. And that just, I mean, basically coffee releases your fight or flight hormones, right?
Right. Yeah. So basically coffee raises cortisol, but it's right. There's things you can do to mitigate some of the effects. So yeah, I mean, I like to drink coffee. I drink coffee, right? The nurses are going to drink coffee. So basically some of the things you can do is drink coffee after a meal, right? So if you eat first and stabilize your blood sugar and then drink your coffee, you can still get the benefits and the energy, but it's less stressful. It's less stimulating to the sympathetic nervous system because your blood sugar is balanced. So that's one of the things you can do. You can add a fat to the coffee, like butter or coconut oil. That helps mitigate some of the effects of the coffee. Right. And then don't drink coffee, super late in the evening. So don't drink it after about 4 p.m. Right. So, I'm not going to say that you can't drink your coffee, but there's things that you can do to, to balance the effects and mitigate some of the effects. So, what I've just said is drink coffee after a meal. Add some sort of fat like butter or coconut oil. And don't drink coffee super late into the evening. So those are some of the things you can do in regards to coffee.
Coffee, its half-life is like 6 hours or something.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly, but the half-life is something like 6 hours. So basically, if you drink coffee at, let's just say if you drink coffee at 6 a.m., right, at 12 p.m., 6 hours later, you still have half the amount of caffeine in your bloodstream. Right. So if that makes sense.
Okay. And then do you have any tips regarding digestion and like when to stop eating? Because a lot of nurses, some of them are lucky they only work 8-hour shifts, but most work 12-hour shifts. So you often find yourself eating a meal after work, and then you're trying to go to bed, and you're going to bed on a full stomach.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, basically this goes into another thing that I wanted to talk about here. So basically when you're a nurse, when you're working, you're going to be stressed. You're going to be sympathetic because that's just part of your job. Right. So basically, to balance your nervous system and to keep your body in balance and healthy, basically it's important to live as healthily and as balanced as you can and to optimize your health when you're not at work, right? So you're going to be stressful at work, but then when you're home, right, you want to keep everything as balanced as possible. So that kind of goes into what you just said. So so basically when you're not working, you want to make sure you optimize your sleep as best as you can, because your sleep is the body's chief parasympathetic tool.
Hmm.
Right. So, so when you're not at work, you want to make sure you're sleeping properly. You want to make sure that you're doing parasympathetic activities, anything that relaxes the body, gets your mind off work, anything that you enjoy doing, will help to balance the autonomic nervous system. So, yeah, so when you're not at work, that's when you really have to, keep things as balanced as possible. So some examples are just, walking in nature, taking a hot bath, things like yoga, journaling, anything you enjoy, anything that makes you smile.
Not watching the news.
Yeah, that actually that was my next one that I had
Uh,
written down. So it's like, so don't try not to like watch politics after work, or try not to take your work home with you, if possible, so listen to calming music, read to your kids, go for a bike ride, anything that just helps get your mind off work and helps, bring you back into balance, will really help take some of the burden off your nervous system from your workday. So, yeah, so basically, just to summarize, there's tools that we use while we're at work, to mitigate some of the effects. But then when you're not at work, there's tools that you use like sleep, etc., to just make your body resilient and keep your body as balanced and as healthy as possible.
so basically on the days off, they need to be
Yeah,
really dialed in and structured.
yeah, exactly. So you just want to optimize as best you can, after work and on your days off. Yeah, because the more balanced your nervous system is, and the healthier the person is, the more balanced the person is, the more stress they can handle. A healthy person, with a healthy lifestyle, an optimal sleep schedule, different tools that they use, can handle the stress of the job and can handle more sympathetic stress than someone who, has like a stressful home environment, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And then, because for me as a nurse, it was really hard. I tried to be as healthy as possible, but regarding food and prep and all that stuff on your days off, you spend a lot of time just trying to prepare for that next 3-day swing of chaos. Um,
yeah.
do you have tips on nutrition, like simple things that people can do so they can make their lives easier?
Yeah, tips on nutrition. Okay, so don't go on a fad diet. First of all, don't cut out entire macronutrients. You want to eat protein and carbohydrates. I don't put a ton of emphasis on fat because protein and fat come together.
Mm.
So I really harp on protein and carbohydrates in each meal, and eat frequently throughout the day, every 3 to 4 to 5 hours, right? So don't cut out macronutrients, eat frequently, which will help to stabilize your blood sugar, which again helps to balance your autonomic nervous system. So yeah, so those are some of the main things that I harp on is, eat protein and carbs and eat frequently throughout the day.
And I would assume you probably believe in cleaner alternatives as opposed to Oreos and processed food.
Yeah, exactly. Try eat whole foods, plant-based foods and animal-based foods, try to stay away from the processed foods. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of, I look at everything from like a physiology perspective, so that's why I harp on the macronutrients. But yeah, I mean, we can go into the food quality and
Let's go into that. I'd love to talk about that.
yeah. Okay.
Because
So
I know you just published an article regarding advocating more for plants and industrial farming. Obviously, industrial farming is
yeah,
absolutely
so
terrible.
okay, so yeah, if you want to go into that, so basically, so what I try to do is when my animal based foods, I try to get more clean, more organic, more free range animal based foods, because the animal based foods are generally more toxic, with like factory farms and industrial animal farming. So when I go like the animal route, it can get expensive, but I try to go more like cleaner, more free range. But then some of the plant foods you can get away with not going organic, because the plant foods generally have less toxins. So yeah, so like the plant, as far as the quality, like the plant foods, I don't stress as much. But for the animal-based foods, I stress more quality.
And do you have any research or anything in your head regarding like antibiotics and all that stuff and their effects on the body with meat?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, this is a whole nother topic. I mean, I mean, you have the antibiotics that they feed the animals, then you have the vaccines, and then you have the feed, like, the feed, the GMO corn that they feed them, and then the pesticides sprayed on the grains that they feed the animals. So basically, animals, basically toxins are stored in fat, right?
Mm.
So all the toxins that the animals are exposed to with, the feed and the antibiotics and all that, that's stored in the animal's fat, and they sell the meat by weight, right? So they fatten it up on purpose
Ah.
to to get more to get more money out of their sales. So basically they accumulate toxins, right? So if you're eating conventional animal products, you're getting a lot more toxins, right, than if you're eating conventional plant-based foods, that don't accumulate toxins in the fat like the animals do. So yeah, so that's why, as far as quality, I like to stress more on the animal side, if that makes sense. Things can get expensive, but it's just something to think about, in regards to budget.
Well, it's quite interesting because in the United States, I think our food is much different. It's more focused on business, and a lot of other countries like Australia, New Zealand, they have really good meat because they have different litigation on it. But in the States, it's like if you're not buying organic, you're pretty much eating poison every day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the States, I'm not familiar with, a ton of other countries. Yeah, I mean, I harp on the food quality for sure. I try not to be OCD about it, because just based on the clients that I've seen, a lot of times, stressing over your health all the time and stressing over the quality of your food, like that can add just a whole nother stressor that you don't need. So I try not to be OCD about in terms of the food quality. I mean, that's a big reason why I harp on physiology, is because, when you understand physiology, when you understand how to, take care of the human body and to balance your nervous system and to balance your hormonal system, right? It takes a lot of the stress off the other stuff, like, the food obsession and the food quality, if that makes sense. So.
And then I saw on one of your Instagram posts, you were talking about lab tests.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about this. I've never heard the concept before, but it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Like, okay, I made a video about how lab tests are a waste of money.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Yeah, I mean, you're in the nursing industry. I don't know if you guys are big on lab tests. But
Well, for ourselves, no, because a lot of nurses don't take the best care of themselves because they're so stressed out. But I mean, for our patients, we have to have a baseline. I'm not obviously not opposed to lab tests there, but if we're going to talk about long-term preventative health, your philosophy is basically lab tests are. I'm going to
yeah,
go
no,
ahead and let
I
you
mean,
talk.
yeah, it's they're needed, for some people, but it's just, for a lot of people, like, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about they just want to be fixed, right? It's like you can take a lab test and it can show you like your vitamin deficiencies or your cortisol or, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, it's, you have to do the work yourself. You still you have to change your lifestyle. You have to change your nutrition. You have to balance your nervous system. So it's, you can get lab tests and it can show you everything that's wrong with you, but ultimately, it's up to you to make the changes, right? Like the
Instead
lab
of
test.
just taking that pill, that vitamin D pill they give you, right? When
Right,
you could get it
exactly.
from the sun.
Yeah, it's like you're spending money on the lab test to show you that you're low in vitamin D when you could eat like some liver, or you could spend that money on like high quality food that contains vitamin D, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah,
right.
but most people don't know there's a problem until it's screaming at them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, what can you tell me more about your experience in nursing? Yeah, I mean, like, what kind of patients were you working with? Was it just like anybody and everybody, or were you in
Yeah,
the ER, or
I was in intensive care, so
yeah.
patients generally come from emergency or surgery, and then they they fix them up briefly, send them to us, and then they're under critical observation. So in California, the nursing ratios are a lot better. It's generally two patients.
Okay.
Uh, Usually, they need a lot of
Two
care
two patients per nurse.
per nurse. Yeah. If it's a really really sick patient, generally like a cardiac arrest, and you have to put them. You have to use basically like a cryotherapy to try and keep their body cold. Um, that's generally two nurses to one patient.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
so it was more like emergency care and stuff like that.
it's very very high level care. It's besides emergency, I would say, is probably one of the most stressful environments, but intensive care, I think they go hand in
Similar.
hand in a way.
I got.
But yeah, I was working at a trauma center, so trauma patients, brain bleeds, tubes everywhere, uh, 12 different medications on a IV pole, lots of monitoring. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's very stressful. It's intense.
Yeah, and for nurses, you have not only do you have a person's two people's lives in your hands, with all of these monitors going off all the time. You also, especially if you work day shift, you have management coming to you telling you that you need to chart differently when you're trying to focus on someone who's going to die. You have all these really small minuscule tasks that need to be done that a lot of times aren't that important. And so there's so much multitasking going on in the nurse's mind all day, and it's just one of the most stressful jobs, I believe.
Yeah. So yeah, huh. So and you worked like 12-hour shifts?
Yeah, but it's generally like 14 hours. I luckily lived 5 minutes away from the hospital I worked at, but a lot of nurses I know, some of them were commuting 2 hours a day. So that's not even accounting for wake up time, get ready, drive to work 12 hours, maybe have to stay late because you had a really sick patient, and then drive all the way back home and get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And I told a lot of these people, like, oh, why don't you move closer? And they'd always have some reason that, oh, they don't want to move, or XYZ. But I really tried to harp on like, you gotta pay attention to the small things. Like your commute time is going to save a lot of energy. If you're sitting in a car for 2 hours a day, you're going to be even more stressed.
Yeah. I totally sympathetic. I mean, how hard was it to wind down like after a work day? You know,
For me, I got a lot better at being able to wind down, and some days I was just so exhausted that I'd just fall asleep immediately. But yeah, I wish I knew the stuff I know now regarding routine and like meditation and breath work, because that would have made my life so much simpler. But yeah, some days you have a patient dies on your watch and you go home and you're like, I'm not going to get any sleep and I got to wake up in 4 hours.
wow. Yeah. Wow. That's intense.
And then there's a moral dilemma to that too, because you have to work, you have to make money, and you want the best with your patients. But a lot of times nurses are so freaking tired. How can you really expect them to provide the best care if they're so burnt out and the staffing ratios are low and they're calling people to come in for extra days and not giving them their vacation time, stuff like that. So it can be, the healthcare system is in need of more nurses and definitely more focus on self-care for them. So that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good for you.
Yeah, do you have anything else you want to say regarding health to wrap up this beautiful conversation?
Did I have anything written down? I'll just reiterate what I said. So basically when you're working, when you're stressed out, you're overly sympathetic. If it goes on for too long without using the tools to mitigate, you'll get burned out, as you mentioned. So, and then some of the tools you can use while you're at work, slow down throughout your day, find a quiet place, take breaks whenever possible, check in with yourself, check in with your breathing, close your mouth, do 5, deep nose breaths. That really helps to reset the system. Try to maybe walk outside on your breaks, get into nature if possible. Try to bring food if possible. Eat as frequently as you can. Try to snack every 2 to 3 hours. Try to eat a meal every 4 to 5 hours. Try to eat both macronutrients, protein and carbohydrates. So an example of a carbohydrate would be something like fruit. An example of a protein would be something animal-based, like hard-boiled eggs. Right? So that's while you're at work. And when you're on your days off or after work, try to optimize your sleep as best as you can. Try to do parasympathetic activities as often as you can. Anything that you enjoy, anything that helps take your mind off work. So some examples would be, going for walks in nature, taking a hot bath, yoga, drawing, journaling, anything you enjoy, anything that makes you smile. Try not to get into politics after work. Try not to take work home with you. Try not to watch the news, especially these days. Listen to calming music, play with your kids, go for a bike ride with your kids. So basically try to prioritize sympathetic activities when you're not at work. That will really help to balance the nervous system and prevent burnout. Yeah, so those are the tips. Those are my closing tips that I have for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex, for your expertise.
Okay.
If you guys want to follow Alex, you can check out his Instagram. He's got tons of video content with whiteboard stuff. He talks about a lot of these concepts. af.health.
Yep, af.health on Instagram, and then
Awesome.
you have my website, which is just my name, alexfata.com.
FATA.
Yeah, FATA. And then if you're interested to learn more, I just released a course. It's about the principles of human physiology and FAD Diet Recovery. That's on my website. It's called Cutting Through Health Fads, Principles of Physiology 101. So essentially that teaches you the foundations of human physiology and how the human body works. So just if you guys are interested, check that out.
Awesome. All right, nurses, stay healthy. Thank you so much, Alex. I will talk to you later. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks.